Of convening having arrived for the Appropriations Subcommittee on Education and Youth and Higher Education. Join me, if you will, in a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for your many blessings. I thank you, Lord, for the jobs that you have commissioned each of us to do. And we pray, Lord, for your wisdom and guidance as we go through these issues that are so critical to the ongoing of the programs and services that the state renders. I pray, Lord, that you would give us wisdom and insight and discretion and discernment, Lord, as we look through these issues, and that we would do our jobs well. These things we pray in your holy name. Amen. Okay. First item on let me preface by saying, as we go through the tracking documents, as you make your presentations, I would ask you to reference the line item in the tracking documents that you're referring to, and give us just a minute to find them. Tracking documents may not be in the order in which the speakers speak. But that being said, first on our agenda this morning is Commissioner Amy Jacobs from the Department of Early Care and Learning. I think that'll be good. Check it and make sure that yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Well, good morning, Mr.
Good morning,
Chairman.
Amy.
It's good to
How you
see
doing?
you. I'm good. And members of the committee. So decal is on page 1, section 22, and the first item is 122.1.
Would you repeat that line item again?
Yes, sir. 122.1.
122.1. Everybody got it? All right.
And that is an increase of funds for the CAPS program, which is our Child Care and Parent Services program, to provide assistance to low-income families for the cost of child care. It's an add of $3.5 million, and that would fund about 625 additional slots. So CAPS is our subsidy program that provides financial assistance to low-income working families so that they can afford child care for their children. So that would be an additional $3.5 million to that program.
If you would speak to the requirements to qualify for this program, if there are work or school requirements.
Yes, sir.
You would give us some details
Sure.
on that.
So for the CAPS program, there are several requirements. There is an income requirement, so families must be at or below 50% of the state median income to be eligible, and that equates to about $40,000 for a family of 4. There also is a work and activity requirement, so they have to be working or in some type of school program, higher education program for 24 hours a week at a minimum. We also limit it to priority group funding, so we have about a dozen priority groups so that we can serve the most in need, and those include things that you would expect: children in foster care, victims of domestic violence, those experiencing homelessness, very low income, things like that. So there are income and work requirements with the program.
Okay.
The next item is on page, well, it was my page 3, 124.1. It's in the pre-K program. And that is just an increase of funds to reflect the employer share of the teachers' retirement system adjustments of $602,706. The next item is 124.2. And that is an increase of formula funds for training and experience for pre-K teachers, an increase of $1,474,848, and that is very similar to what K-12 teachers received based on years of experience and degree. And this is for obviously our pre-K teachers to recognize them for that as well. The next item is 124.3. And that is an increase of funds for the pre-K operating portion of our grant, and of an increase of 2.5%, which is about $1.7 million additional dollars. As far as our records go back, we can't find an increase to the operating portion of that in over a decade. And so obviously expenses have increased for basic operations of these pre-K classrooms. And so that's an increase of 2.5% to that portion of the formula.
How many slots do we have allocated currently for that program?
We're funded for 84,000 slots.
How many do you have utilized?
66,000. So
Okay.
enrollment is down this year.
If you would clarify the difference in partially between the enrollment. I know we have people saying, well, we want to get in the program, but talk talk about how many it takes to really make a class gel, or for it to be economically feasible to fund a child in pre-K?
Yes, sir. So the formula is based on 22 students per classroom, and that's 22 students with a teacher and assistant teacher. And we hold pretty true to that because that's how we're funded based at the classroom level. I will say this year, since enrollment is down, we have added a lot of flexibility. So we will continue to fund you at the full classroom cost if you have fewer than 22 students, so that we can get as many students in classrooms as we can this year. But it's 22 students per classroom.
Well, I know in the past we've had a lot of people comment like onesies and twosies and say, "Why can't my child get into pre-K?" And to be honest with you, there's not enough critical mass of students to gel a class or a service.
Well, and pre-K is just not like a local school system. You know, you don't have to go to where you're districted. You have a choice to go, obviously, to your public school in your district, or you can go to a private child care program. So we can't always meet exactly what the parents want because they may want to go to a public school class that's completely full and they need to go to a wait list, but there could be, you know, a class next door at a private child care that just may not be right for them.
Right. Okay, thank you.
And then our last item is 124.4.
Okay.
Which is increase of funds for one pre-K specialist that was eliminated in the FY21 budget. It's an addition of $81,149. Our pre-K specialists they work directly with our pre-K teachers and assistant teachers in their classroom, and so we don't have a whole lot of them, and so we welcome this add back to the pre-K specialist position.
Okay. Senator Sims had a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple of them. You mentioned pre-K training, and I think are we adding dollars? And I didn't get okay, here it is, 124.2, formula funds for training and experience for pre-K teachers. Who's responsible for that training?
So this is basically mirroring what K-12 receives for their T&E pay schedule. So for teachers, obviously, as they get an additional degree, they're paid for that, or additional years of experience in the classroom. So it's just like T&E for K through 12 teachers that's funded every year through QBE.
Okay, so we don't have any special programs set up to train these teachers?
We do train them, but this is not what that's for. Yes, ma'am. We do provide professional development on an ongoing basis for existing teachers and new teachers. It's just part of our existing pre-K budget, but that's not what this ad is for.
Okay, so this ad is for what? I'm not sure.
So this is similar to what's funded through QBE. So the training and experience schedule that K-12 teachers receive based on their years of experience, they get a bump every 2 or 3 years. And this is the same thing for pre-K teachers.
Okay. The other question is, give me a basic example of what classroom operational expenses are. You said increased funds for pre-K, and that was in 124.3.
Yes. So this is basic operating. It could be rent, it could be facilities, it could be paying for any type of maintenance, it could be paying for classroom supplies, materials, things like that.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions on this portion of the budget? Thank you, Commissioner Jacobs. We appreciate the great job you do. I think we're going to move around in our order just a little bit. Some of the agencies that are here in departments have very little change. I'm going to go ahead and free them up. Basically the K-12 and higher ed budgets will take longer. So we're going to move to the Georgia Professional Standards Commission, Matt Arthur, or their representative. Are they here?
Yeah, I'm going to call them on the phone.
Okay. Pardon?
Hi.
Are you at 10?
Can you hear me, Matt?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Good
I
morning.
can hear you.
Good morning, Matt. How you doing?
Good morning, Senator Tippins. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. If you would make your presentation, if you would reference some line items in the tracking documents that we can follow you with, if you would make the presentation for Professional Standards Commission.
You can find the Georgia Professional Standards Commission on page 26 and 27.
What is the line item number?
and it's to address, the line item is 172.3. Is the first one. Are you ready?
Hang on just a minute. My documents, the page numbers don't line up, but okay, I've got you, 172.3.
0.3. Yes, sir.
Okay. Is everybody online? Got it?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead, Matt.
Okay. What you'll see is a $140,000 ad, and that is to meet program needs in our ethics and ed prep divisions. And it relates, last year in our FY21 appropriations, there was a line that added these positions to our budget, but didn't add any money to hire an investigator and a paralegal. And so this $140,000 would meet that intent and really help us operate. We have about 22% of our cases that go over the 60-day rule set in Georgia Code, and we are in dire straits in that department as far as needing another ethics investigator to help us with the cases. We view around 2,000 cases a year, Senator Tippins.
Do you have any questions on that? Any questions?
If no questions, sir.
There does not appear to be any questions. Okay. Does this complete the changes? And
That's one change. The second change is on line 172.4. And that addresses the Troops to Teachers program.
could you explain that, please?
Change is on line 172.4.
Okay.
And that program addresses the Troops to Teachers program.
You're cutting in and out.
Okay.
If you can speak a little closer to you.
Yeah. And that program was a federally funded program. It was supposed to be for 5 years. And a month ago, we found out they were going to cut it off. And that, of course, goes right along with Senate Bill 88. Program, it was supposed to be for 5 years. And they cut. A month ago, we found out they were going to cut it off. And that,
Hey, Matt,
Matt,
could you turn your computer off, the volume on your computer off, please?
I can do it.
Thank you.
Okay.
go ahead.
Is that better?
Yes.
Much better.
Okay. So that the Troops to Teachers has been a huge success for us. We've been running it for 2 years, and we found out they are cutting off all funds May 15th. And Senator Tippins, right now, we're one of the few organizations that is recruiting veterans into the education workforce. And we have people that is their total job. And so we are asking for this money to go towards that, since the Department of Defense is cutting out that grant, so that we can continue to recruit and help these veterans teach in Georgia schools.
Okay. I think this concludes your appropriations. Are there any questions about Georgia Professional Standards Commission? Senator Walker?
Commissioner Arthur, are you working with the Vector Center by chance on the troops to teachers?
Absolutely. Senator Walker, we've got, we have two people they have connections in every single military base, and of course the Vector Center is very important for us too. We have teachers in over close to 40 counties across the state, but yes, we are.
Great, thanks.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Arthur. I appreciate your time and participation. Appreciate the job you do.
I appreciate you, Senator Tippett. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Next on our agenda this morning, we'll call on Governor's Office of Student Achievement, Ms. Joy Hawkins, the Executive Director.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members. So we're at 173 on page 27.
Okay, everybody online? Let's go.
Two increases from the House side, 173.3 for the Growing Readers Program
Okay.
and 173.4 for the Governor's School Leadership Academy.
Do you want to speak to the cuts that have been in that program before and why these funds are being added back?
Yes, sir. So in the big budget last year, we took some pretty large cuts in these two programs. And we had a scaling and sustainability model and plan in place. And so these funds would actually help us replace the funds that were cut last year. And what would really happen is that we would be able to hire specialists and coaches in the RESAs. And they're the boots on the ground who actually do the training for both of these programs. And so it would be an enhancement, not only for the program, but for the RESAs.
Okay. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Sims?
Good morning, Joy. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm great. Now, we are increasing monies for Growing Readers Program and the Governor's School Leadership Academy. Is that what you're saying?
Again, this is the House recommendation.
Okay.
Of course, we stand by the governor's recommendation, which was no increase.
Oh, so the governor is saying no increase?
Correct.
Okay. I like the governor's plan.
Senator, I would love for you to, let's talk offline, because
Thank you, Joy.
I know you have some hesitations, but it is a great program.
Oh, I no doubt the program is good, but we'll talk.
Okay, great.
Any other questions? Thank you so much, Ms. Hawkins.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is Employees Retirement System. Jim Poland, Executive Director. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jim Potvin from the Employees Retirement System. As a reminder, the ERS is responsible not just for...
If you would give us a line number.
I'm sorry. Let's start with page 24, line 160.1. 160.1, yeah.
All right. Anybody here?
Okay, so the ERS is responsible not just for the large pension system for statewide state employees, but also several smaller systems, including the one noted in item 160, which is the Georgia Military Pension Fund. That's a small supplemental benefit for Georgia Air and Army National Guard. We have a small increase in the actuarially determined employer contribution for this coming year of $13,000. The next item, 161.1, it's a similar program, this one for public school employees. These are non-teacher public school employees such as cafeteria and custodial workers. We have an increase in their actuarially determined contribution as well. That's the $627,000 number. In addition, the way the benefit formula works, it's a dollar multiplier times years of service, and that multiplier can be changed over time. And when the House was making their deliberations, they proposed adding a 25-cent increase to that multiplier, and the $1.6 million is sort of the first year's payment on that increase.
Any questions?
The other two programs, lines 159 and 162, are either funded from the trust fund for the pension systems in the case of 162, or in the case of 159, the deferred compensation programs, those are funded out of the plan assets themselves. So no appropriations.
Any further comment, question? Hearing none, we appreciate your presentation.
Thank you for your time.
much. Next on our agenda, Teachers Retirement System, Mr. Buster Evans, Executive Director. A legend in education.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'll be speaking to you from line 325.1, and fortunately, this is a reduction in your budget. So I'll give you just a moment to turn there, but historically, as you turn, back in the 1970s, there were several large school systems who merged into the Teachers Retirement System of Georgia. We assumed the cost of living adjustment floor COLA for those individuals. Each year, that number continues to decrease as members of those retirement systems continue to pass away. Eventually, this will be a zero. And there'll be, at that point, there'll be no direct funding coming to the Teachers Retirement System of Georgia. As you see, the reduction of this for this year will be $35,721, bringing the state amount of support into this of $155,000. And Mr. Chairman, unless you have questions or members of the committee, we'll be glad to give the time over to someone else.
Any questions? Thank you so much, Mr. Evans. Always a pleasure to work with you.
Y'all have a great day. Thank you.
Next, we'll go back to the Department of Education. Have Mr. Russ Groom, Chief Financial Officer, and Ms. Tiffany Taylor, Chief Policy Director. I'm not sure that's the exact title, Ms. Taylor, but it's pretty close. Over policy.
Thank you, Chairman, for the opportunity to present our FY 2022 budget. I'll start with 135.4, page 5. This is an increase of $425,000 for 5 young farmer positions in Baldwin, Fulton, Pickens, Ware, and Worth County.
I'm sorry, would you say that again?
Yeah, this is for 5 young farmers in Baldwin, Fulton, Pickens, and Ware, and Worth counties. It's an increase of $425,000.
I learned yesterday that I believe it's Baldwin County. There's a local match requirement. I don't think Baldwin has the local match on this, so there may only wind up being 4 on this line item.
It may just be 4. Okay. All right, our next change is on page 7, 138.3. This is an increase of funds for our charter facility grants pursuant to House Bill 430. It's an increase of $1 million. This now puts the facility grants at $4.9 million, which is an increase from $39,000 to about $57,000 per charter school.
Explain exactly what that does.
Our charter, Tiffany's title is also Director of Charter Schools.
So the purpose of the Charter Schools Facilities Grant is really to try to provide some equity to charter schools and their facilities funding. So the grant has been in place for a number of years. I think 2 years ago, $2 million was added to the grant budget, bringing it to a little over to about $3.9 million. This year they're proposing to add another $1 million to it.
So what are these funds specifically used for?
Yes, they can use it for, similarly to capital outlay funds, they can use it for the improvement of their facilities, their current facilities that they have in place.
Okay.
They have to own or lease their property, but if there any facility improvements or modifications necessary for the maintenance of the buildings.
Okay, your button's not working.
I'm sorry.
Hang on just a second. I'm sorry, you're on now. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. I heard them call the name Tiffany when you got up, but I didn't get your name.
I'm sorry, Tiffany Taylor.
Thank you.
Senator Sims. Your mic should be on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are these new dollars, Ms. Taylor, or are they taken from the regular school budget, the public school budget? Where are we getting these dollars from?
The $1 million that are being proposed for the facilities grant are not being taken from, to our knowledge, from other local public schools.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, continue, please.
Okay. Our next change is on page 9, 140.3. This is an increase of $323,000. We are transferring, it's basically a transfer from our CTAE program. They're going to move the Rural Teacher Training Initiative. I think the House feels it better aligns with our curriculum program. So they're moving it out of our CTAE program.
So it's moving from CTAE to
the curriculum.
curriculum department?
Yes.
Okay. Currently, this is being handled through GISTIC, is that right?
Correct. And it'll,
Okay. Will it continue to be funded through GISTIC, or will it be a direct funding to DOE?
it will continue to fund to the Georgia Youth Science. Is that Technology Center? This is a contract that we contract with the Georgia Youth Science and Biomed, and we will continue to have that contract. It's just the funds are just transferring from our CTAE program into curriculum.
Are any services provided through the GISTIC program and biomass program?
Not from the department's side.
So there are some services that are provided through BioEd, and GSYTC has been the pass-through funding between DOE. We have to go through GSYTC, I think, because of the way that the funding was originally provided, and then to BioEd. We don't make the determination outside of that. That was just how it was originally structured, of it going through GSYTC over to BioEd. So that would be up to, obviously, the legislature if you chose to make the funds go directly from DOE to BioEd.
Is BioEd and biomass, is that the same organization?
I don't believe so, but I'm not sure.
Okay. I might follow up with you later on that.
Our next change is on page 11, 142.2. I just noted this one. This is not a change in the House, but it's a reduction of enrollment decline in our GNETS program of $3,388,911. That's an enrollment decline reduction. Our next change is on page 13, 145.2. 145.2 and 145.3 kind of go together. These are reducing. The 145.2 is a reduction formula funds for sparsity grants based on an enrollment decline, and the 145.3 is a reduction in the formula funds for residential treatment facilities based on attendance. The House version, it's a less of a reduction for both based on some updated numbers, some updated enrollment numbers, and so it's some cleanup. That's
Do y'all concur with the House calculation?
We do.
Okay.
The next change is 145.4. This is an increase of funds to offset austerity reductions in the feminine hygiene grant. This is an increase of $950,000. This will bring the grant to about $1,250,000.
Now, the $1,250,000 is that the current amount with the add? Is
The original amount was $1 million. Austerity, I think, took $600,000, or we restored $600,000 last year, and then they added back, or they've added back a total of $750,000, or what was it, $400,000? Yeah, it was originally $1 million, and now it's 1.2 with this $950,000 add.
Okay. All right. How much was it prior to COVID? What was the total amount in the?
$1 million.
So $1 million was all that was in it, right?
Correct.
So how much was in the 21 general and amended budget? I see the House has added $950,000 to the current. How much is in the continuation budget before that?
Yeah, it was $300,000.
So actually, we're funding it $1,250,000 where it was $1 million before COVID.
Correct.
Do you have any figures on what the cost of that was actually on being drawn down in the expenditure of those funds?
Well, it's my understanding all the funds have gone out to the districts. So whatever funding comes in, we pass it all out to the districts.
So is it an allocation to the district on just a percentage basis, or is it actual based on what the cost of providing the services are?
No, it's based on the percentage of poverty in the district, poverty of students, female students that are grades 6 through 8.
So is this provided, is this provided uniformly through the state, or is it?
Yes, provided uniformly through the state.
But it's not.
But it's based on a formula.
But is it only provided to students of poverty throughout the state, or is it a service in all of the schools?
Well, it's in all the schools. The way we did it originally, it was in all of the schools. So we calculated the percentage of students, female students in every school, whether it was high poverty or low poverty school, because even low poverty schools have some students. And we did a base for all schools and then a per pupil addition for those female students in poverty above that, so that it was equitably distributed across the state.
Okay. I think we skipped an item number 144.3. If you would go back and cover that 144.3.
144.3. Okay. Okay, 140.
There was a house change, added $75,000 to it.
Oh, yeah, this was a $75,000 increase, 144.3 for the pilot program in STEM and AP STEM.
Have y'all reviewed that program and the operation of it?
It's my understanding we have not yet. We're in the process, or is this one, is that the?
This wasn't a request
If you would speak to the
Yes, this
microphone.
was
I
our request.
apologize. This wasn't our request. So we are in the process of reviewing that program for both our Georgia Virtual School and in alignment with College Board.
My understanding is this is a pilot program to use exceptional teachers and provide science education on a virtual format and have it available throughout Georgia. I'd like for y'all to review the logistics of how that would work. Is it feasible? Is this a reasonable expenditure in the big scheme of things from the state? Get back with me. We've got to go to Green Door in the morning, so this is on a short timeline.
Absolutely. I'll tell you, I spoke with our Chief Technology Officer last night about this particular item. His assessment is that $75,000 was not going to be enough to carry out those functions, but that he'd be able to have a number for me this afternoon.
Well, my understanding is that this number was derived by the two school districts, and they've basically agreed to operate within this number. I'm curious about DOE's thoughts on the implementation of it and the effectiveness of it. And I know we struggle with providing quality science education in all the school districts in the state because of scarcity of teachers. And if this is an opportunity to have quality virtual learning above what's currently available, we need to look at it, but we need to know more about it. So, thank you. I'd appreciate your input. Okay, continue, please.
All right, I believe we are on 146.3. Oh, I'm sorry. I skipped.
Did you skip that one?
Yep, skipped the whole 145. 145.5.
Okay, you got it.
Yes, we have an increase of funds for residential treatment facilities for a budget analyst, grant manager of $125,000.
Okay, so that would be housed within DOE?
Yes, sir.
All right, let me ask you now, there's only 21 of these units, and it's basically a calculation model. My understanding is it's checking their reporting, the accuracy of their reporting numbers. Is there any operational review involved in this in terms of the tasking of this individual?
I believe that's the intent of breaking it out. We originally had this position a couple years back, and it was combined with the school nurse duties. And I believe the intent is for this manager to have a more hands-on in the actual finances and review of these RTFs. And so that's why the House has recommended we bring it back as its own position. Does that answer the question?
My personal opinion, and going through lots of years and looking at this budget, there always seems to be a connectional problem with DOE and residential treatment centers as far as validation of the numbers that are turned in. Mm-hmm. I have requested the RTCs to give me data on each one of the 21 facilities to know what their high and low numbers are on a monthly basis, and also tie it back to their capacity. I would, just in terms of an allotment at DOE, just to track that, it doesn't look to me like there's enough work to involve one person. I think there needs to be one person in charge of it, but I don't think it's a full-time job. So we're going to look at that. I welcome any input y'all may have on your thoughts on that. It almost looks to me like it needs to be some shared duties with other applications. But my suggestion is to appoint one person in DOE and let that be their responsibility. I guess in the language of the street is we need one throat to choke on the thing. We don't need it to be passed around as to who's responsible. Well, it's them today and it's somebody else tomorrow. There needs to be some clarity and definition, and my suggestion to y'all would be, if there's any discrepancy or disparity in the numbers that are reported by RTC, I'd love to have a clarification of this. I mean, going forward, we've been talking about fixing the lines of communication and fixing the operation of this thing for years, and it's time for it to happen. I don't mind trying to get an appropriation or a partial appropriation for a person that's going to be responsible. I don't think it's a full-time position, but it's time for all this arguing about the numbers and what's involved to stop. I mean, we've got to have somebody that can work out the problem.
Yeah, I will tell you that having worked with this program some the last 2 years, it does need a full-time position. We've gone the route of having a dedicated part-time position that did that role in addition to another one that was a direct contact that did prove to be a struggle. There is a significant amount of work more than just kind of running and verifying the numbers. There is some mediation involved in working with both the RTCs and the local school districts by which they have the MOU with. And I think there was an audit that was done a couple of years ago that specifically stated that we needed to have a person, a sole person that was working on this RTF work. But I'm happy to talk to you about it afterwards so you can kind of lay out to you the different job duties that that person does.
Where would that person be housed in DOE?
Within the budget right now, it is listed as a non-QBE grant, but
I'm talking about operationally.
operationally, it could be in policy or it could be in budget.
Okay, let's talk offline.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
All right. The next change is on page 14, 146.3. This is an increase of funds for school nutrition, $5 million. I'd say it's an increase, but it's really a restoration. I mean, back in '09, our school nutrition budget was about $39 million. With this additional $5 million, this puts us back about $29 million. And this is we've been kind of getting really close with maintenance of effort with our federal funds, as our federal funds in school nutrition have been increasing, and our state funds have been decreasing. We're getting really close. So this is needed to help sustain that federal requirement.
In the latest relief program, are there any funds earmarked for nutrition in schools?
I'm not aware of any specific to the nutrition grant in the funds, but there is a set-aside reserve.
Could you repeat that?
There's a set-aside reserve that I believe could be used for nutrition funds, but it's not. There's nothing specifically noted to nutrition.
Okay.
That's it.
Go ahead.
All right, next change is on page 16, 150.1. I just want to make a note of this. It's not really changed, but the local 5 mil share of the 111, there is that 80-20 cap that we hit last year, and so without that cap, it would be about $216 million. So there is a cap on it right now. So if it is restored next year, we could see this increase.
Okay.
Next change is on 151.2. And basically, it looks like what the House has done here in 151.2 and 151.6, they've combined the enrollment decline in QBE with the increase for T&E and health insurance premiums. So it nets out to about a reduction of about $52,395,125. Next change is in 151.8. I wanted to make a note of this just to say that our districts are very thankful for the restoration of 60% of austerity in FY 2022 as well, which amounts to about $567 million. That's no change with the House version. Next is 152.2. This is a reduced formula funds for RESAs based on enrollment decline. The House has reduced the reduction to $162,941, and I know the RESAs are very grateful for that.
What about since this is based on the enrollment, do y'all concur with the enrollment numbers?
I think it's, John, he's our QBE expert calculation. It's not, I think it's more of a formula than enrollment. Is that?
For RESA?
Yeah, the RESAs.
Yeah, so they're,
You may want to put the microphone up.
okay. Can you hear me? All right. Yeah, so basically they're just restoring a little bit more money. The grant is actually around 50% austerity, right, as it is. So this is restoring a little bit more money into it. Right.
I think they just, what do you got? They just restored.
Yeah, this is
Yeah, they just restored more funding back of the original, same calculation. Correct. All right. Our next change is on page 22, 156.2. Increase funds to offset austerity reduction for extended day, year, vocational supervisors, industry certification, and youth apprenticeship programs. Looks like the House has restored more of the austerity cut, $840,924. I don't think that's the full amount, but they've gotten it beyond, they've restored more than the 60%. No, do you know what the full amount is, John? No, I can get you that full amount. Do that. Okay, 154.1. Yeah, I believe they're just reflecting an increase of other funds for the commission administration associated with an increased enrollment in state charter schools. I think it's for transparencies for states. They're noting the $2.7 million for the state charter school commission. This is the funds that they take from the local charter commissions out of their allotment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too would like an explanation. It says the purpose of this appropriation is to focus on the development and support in order to better meet the growing. So are we funding based on projection here?
The Charter School Commission is funded on a percentage of the charter schools' allotments. So as their percentage grows, the percent that the Charter School Commission gets to administer the program increases. Is that?
Okay, these are state charter schools.
Generated in addition to state appropriations, correct?
Not within the.
Excuse me, the reflection of the 2.750 million are other funds generated. They are not state appropriated funds.
State general funds.
Correct.
Okay.
They're.
Back to you, Senator Sims. Have you got?
I guess I was looking at 154.1. Well, that's, no, we were on, yeah, we were. Reflect increased other funds for commission administration, I still say it. Oh, well, this is commission administration, right?
Yes, ma'am.
This doesn't have anything to do with academics, just paying administrators?
No, I want to clarify for the committee's edification. This is reflected in the budget, but it's not state appropriated funds. It's
Yes, sir.
external funds that are raised by the Charter School Commission that goes into the state Charter School Commission.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Continue, please, if you would. Mr. Rome.
We're at 156.2. That was the, we did that one. The 156.4 The transfer, this was the transfer that I noted earlier into curriculum. This is the $323,000 for the Georgia Youth Science Bioed contract. The next one is 157.2. I just made a note, wanted to note this because this is the restoration of the $5.3 million for testing. I just wanted to note that of that $5.3 million in FY 2022, $633,000 of it is realized savings within the department as the Department of Education has moved to a more remote work model and reduced our footprint at the Capitol. We've realized rental savings associated with state funds, and those savings were, you could see them throughout the various documents and the different programs, and they all transferred into help pay for the testing.
On the testing, what is the status of the contract on testing? I know it was a 5-year contract, was extended 3 years. When does that 3 years expire?
I believe it had a couple of extensions, but it expires next year. FY 2022 is the last year of the current Milestones contract that we're under.
Were there any modifications between the FY 21 and the FY 22? Well, actually, I'm a little bit unclear on the modifications on the program, basically change orders to the contract. Does the budget request, does that reflect any changes in the contract from 21 to 22?
Do you aware of any change orders? I'm not. The contract we haven't changed, but.
So there are some adjustments from 21 to 22 just based on the fact that in 21 we did not do testing. And so some of those requirements that are pieces that didn't get covered in 21 will now be covered in 22. So there are some adjustments there. I think we sent a document last night that kind of outlined what those changes were from from fiscal year 21 to fiscal year 22, but I think I can pull that up if that helps.
We're running a little bit short of time. Let me ask you if you would do this. I know when we went through the 21 amended budget, y'all gave me an update on the breakdown of the contract as it was originally and how it's been amended. If you would give me any changes in the amendments to that contract that are anticipated in 22. One question specifically in terms of the Beacon contract or the Beacon instrument. Was there a contract increase for that service?
There was not a contract increase for the
So they're
Beacon
providing that
assessments.
at no cost to the state?
They provided it and as an adjustment as a part of reconfiguration of a previous contract. So it's not previous contract, but a reconfiguration of the fiscal year 21 funds. So that was.
Say that again.
So when we had.
Slow down just
I'm
a
sorry.
little bit.
I talk
You're
fast
talking
in
faster
general.
than
Thank
I
you.
can listen.
I apologize. I will slow down. So when we had some of the savings originally from fiscal year 21 as part of the governor had a superintendent's task force for assessment. That task force came back and stated both to the governor and the superintendent and state board that there were specific portions of the Milestones assessment that needed to be adjusted. One was they did want access to an optional formative assessment. Another was that they wanted to take measures to shorten the length of the test and the time that students would have to take it. And so those.
And where did all this come from?
This came from the governor had a superintendent's assessment task force that met periodically throughout the 1920 school year.
Those changes that were made, are they in harmony with existing laws that the legislature has passed in terms of testing?
Ask that question again. I'm sorry.
Are the recommendations that this task force came up with and the changes that were made in the testing, are they in harmony with prior laws that have been put into place for the state? Or does that change protocols?
No, they are in line with laws that are put in place in the state. We have not violated any laws in place in making adjustments for to the assessments based on the suggestions or recommendations from the task force.
All right. The component of the milestones test that had to do with the national norm comparisons, are they still in the milestones test?
Yes, we are still doing national norm comparisons within the milestones test.
Okay. Because I had understood that they had been removed, but
Well, at one time, I think we had this conversation back when there was discussion around Senate Bill 367 last year, and there was a proposal at that time to remove the national norm reference portion from the milestones. And so we had explored that option. That proposal did not go through as a part of Senate Bill 367, so we were not able to remove that option from the testing changes.
explain exactly what the shortening of the test reflected and I mean, I understand the test was shortened. Do you have a number for what it cost us to redo the test just to shorten the test?
I believe we gave that document to you last night, but I can certainly get that to you of the breakdown of that cost as well. We have that for you.
Okay. Good deal. Any other questions on this topic? I know we're getting close on time, but this is important, and there's a lot of money involved, and I want to cover it thoroughly. If you would continue.
Have one more, 157.3. This is an increase of funds for a pilot program for computer science principles AP exams with a focus on school systems with no AP coursework. It's $250,000.
Is this an initiative of the DOE?
No, sir, we did not request these funds.
How would that fit with this program, and if approved, how would it enhance current learning?
I would have, I think we're still exploring this one, and we're working with our testing deputy, Allison Timberlake. I can get you something back.
I need to get back pretty quickly. We've got to go. I've got to have a budget.
We'll get it to you.
I've got to have a budget by close of business this afternoon.
Yes, sir.
Bottom line, so I need some feedback pretty quick.
We'll get it back.
Okay. Any further? Does that conclude your presentation?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any questions? I'm sorry. I didn't see the button. I'm sorry. Senator Walker.
I wanted to wait and let him get through all of it before I ask my question, but I want to go back to section 135.1 on page, it's on my page 5.
Yes, sir.
Tell me about the austerity cuts in this area and how much of that has been restored percentage-wise or for Ag Ed.
135.3.
Yes, sir.
The original restoration was about 60%, which is the 505,727. It looks like, I don't know what the if that was 60. It's like maybe 60, almost 61% was restored by the House.
Okay.
The 589. Yeah, it's just a difference in how they calculate the 60%.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions for the committee? Thank you very much. I appreciate the presentation. We will circle back up today. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
If y'all would get with me when you get the information.
Will do.
USG, our next presenter, Ms. Tracy Cook, Executive Vice Chancellor of the University System. If you would, when you do your presentation, reference the line items prior to speaking to them.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Chairman Tippins. Okay, so the recommendation for fiscal year 22 agency budget reflects for the university system a net increase of $148.2 million.
All right, Let's get a line item.
I'm gonna get ready to get there. Okay, so in total, so what I want to do is section 41, beginning on page 28 of the tracking sheet. What I'll do is the first 3 changes I'll highlight are going to be common across all of the programs.
Hang on. We're on line 269.
269.1. All right, so this change, the first change there is related to the increase in the employer share of the teacher's retirement, which is increasing from 19.06 to 19.81% for fiscal year 22. This is going to be across all of our programs, and the rate change results in about a $7 million increase in state funds. Moving on to 269.2. The agency-wide change here relates to a reduction for the employer share of health insurance for our employees and our retirees. Changes in our region's health plan has saved money, and we've been able to actually reduce the employer premium for the upcoming year. And this is possible through the just good stewardship and fiscal management over our health programs. And again, this is going to be across all programs within the USG budget. It's going to reflect a $1.1 million reduction in state funds across all programs. Moving on to line 269.3. Still on page 28. This is the final agency-wide item, and it's the elimination of funds for the payment that was required to the teacher's retirement system for a subset of our employees that were in the optional retirement plan. If you remember last year, the legislation that actually required this payment was repealed. I think it was House Bill 292. And because of that, these funds are being returned to the state. Again, across all programs, that's a reduction to the budget of $4.7 million. And this will be a permanent action to our base budget.
So the TRS allocation that's been in previous budgets will now be zero in the 22 budget for TRS, and there will be no carry forward from here on in the continuation budget. Is that correct?
So that is correct. It is, again, for the subset of employees that were in the optional retirement plan. So that there was a requirement that for those employees that had moved out of the TRS plan, that we were still responsible to make a contribution to TRS. There was legislation. Once that legislation was repealed, that payment and that requirement is no more. So this is a permanent reduction of funding for that.
So there will not be any further appropriations for the monies, even though those retirees are in some of those retirements are in the plan that are not in the ORP. There will not be any further allocations of funding to regents for funding to pay back into the TRS.
That's correct.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and the last item in section 269.4, I'm sorry. So those were the 3 items that affect all of the programs. The item in the Enterprise Innovation Institute, the 269.4, it is a yes item. And here, this is to keep the Invest Georgia program. It's a pass-through organization, but to keep it within the Board of Regents budget. Invest Georgia currently receives about $250,000 in state appropriations. The fiscal year 21 original appropriation included language to transfer the commitment to the state treasurer. Upon further review of state statutes, the House version keeps the pass-through with the University System of Georgia.
Are there any personnel allocations allocated to Invest Georgia?
I believe they have, the 250 I think supports one person, but I can get you more detail on that.
But they basically have no activity, correct?
That's correct. So there was funding put in. They've made allocations to startups and so that activity is monitored by Invest Georgia, by the organization.
Is that a full-time job?
I'll have to check and see, but I believe it is a full-time job.
Well,
Now, that employee is not an employee of the university system. Again, this is a pass-through organization. We, in essence, receive the money, and we simply pass it through to the organization.
who's the organization that it's passed through to?
That's Invest Georgia.
Okay. That is a agency of the state government?
That's correct.
Okay. But they do have personnel, correct?
Yes, I believe the 250, and I'll get more details on that, but I think the 250 is for administrative support, and I think it does support a person.
Okay, thank you. If you would get that
Absolutely.
information, let me know as soon as possible.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move to page 30, 277.3. And here you'll see a reduction of 70.
Hang on, let me back up a minute. I think the next one in my book's 273.3.
And I believe 27, I'm sorry if you.
That
can
was
read-
a house edition, 273.3.
Excuse me one second. Yes, my apologies. I think I lost my page. 273.3, that's on page 30. That is a $75,000 reduction of one-time funding for the cybersecurity maturity model certification. This funding was provided to the Board of Regents in the fiscal year 21 budget to support Technology Association of Government in implementing this certification, which trains the Georgia companies in cyber resilience. So again, it was a one-time add in fiscal year 21. The training has been done, and so this is, again, a permanent reduction in the 22 budget.
So this will be a zero balance going forward.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Moving on to 274.2, this is on page 31. Here, this is, the USG is being provided with $500,000 to support the creation of an Imminent Scholar for sickle cell research. And so the Georgia Research Alliance, which leverages state dollars, will contribute an additional $1.5 million in support to endow this research position, working with Emory, Morehouse, and the Children's Hospital of Atlanta. And again, it will be a one-time, it will be removed from the budget in fiscal year 23, but it is a one-time add to leverage an additional $1.5 million to establish that endowed scholar.
Okay.
Okay, moving on to page 32, 275.3. Here you'll see an increase of $359,000 for operations at the Georgia Tech Research Institute. The House budget includes targeted restorations of fiscal year 21 funds cut, not only for this program, but for 5 additional programs. We call them B units. These are units that support the university system. If I may, I'll list the 5. So you'll see 276.3, which is the Marine Institute. Their funding is also being restored, $71,000. 277.4, the Marine Resource Extension Center, $83,000 is being restored. The Medical College of Georgia, hospitals and clinics, line 278.1, $1.6 million is being restored. And then line 280.3, it's embedded in our special funding initiatives, but it's for the Georgia Youth Science Technology Center, and here $53,000 is being restored. Many of these.
What was that last line item? I'm sorry.
280.3. And again,
Okay.
that's for the Georgia Youth Science Technology Center. And so these were cuts that occurred in FY '21, and the House is proposing to restore these cuts.
What is the total? What is the total existing allocation for that in the continuation budget?
I know Betsy's here. Is it 750? 895,000.
895.
That's correct,
And that
sir.
was in FY '21
Correct.
continuation budget. Okay.
Okay. Moving on to 279.3, we're now on the bottom of page 35. We're going to shift to the public libraries program. So here on line 279.3, you will see an increase for the library funding formula of $345,000. The library formula provides over $32 million to support professional librarian salaries, materials, and services across our public libraries across the state. The formula is population-driven, and the increase of $345,000 is due to the increase in the Georgia population.
Does the number that it was based on, does that represent the current numbers that we have from the census?
So we learned, actually yesterday, we pulled, it was a number based on what was available at the time. When we looked at the information yesterday and reran the calculation, that number would change from 345,000 to 47,000.
Okay.
Okay?
So
And
that based on the more actual
More
numbers
accurate.
that came out on census in November?
That's correct.
Is that correct? Okay, thank you.
On line 279.4, you'll see an increase of 560,000, and this is to increase the materials portion of the library budget. So right now, that budget is about 3.8 million. So the increase of 5% per capita, this would be an increase of 5% per capita, library systems across the Georgia, bringing the total materials support to 40 cents per capita. Moving on to 283.2, and so the rest of the items in 283.2 are for our teaching program, and so this begins at the bottom of page 39. A quick reminder, I always want to just kind of remind everyone how we get our money. So about 90% of the money that the state provides to the university system, so 90% of the $2.3 billion comes through us through the funding formula. So the teaching program is where we receive the majority of our money. The primary driver of our formula, obviously, is enrollment. It's enrollment. It's the number of students that we teach each and every year. The Lieutenant Governor, and I'll start at line 283.2. I'm sorry, the Governor's recommendation of 57 million supports this growth. These funds support our increases of our growing number of students across our campuses. This is what we use to hire our faculty and advisement and all those things that support the instruction mission of our institution. And it's basically supporting a growth in enrollment of about 1.5%. Moving on to 283.2, this includes the support for new academic facilities or square footage across our institutions that will come online in fiscal year 22. So there's going to be an increase of 336,000 square feet, and that generates $1.9 million in state funds through the formula. And these funds support the utilities and the maintenance of basic maintenance, custodial, and things like that for those facilities. Moving on to 283.3, again.
In the interest of time, I've reviewed these. These are pretty much standard calculations. If you would, the one of, I think the most probably most questions about is 283.7. If we would just move on ahead to that. I think these others are just adjustments that are typical, that I think Senate Budget Office has confirmed the numbers to be correct.
Okay, perfect. So 283.3, which is on page 39, this is an addition of 7.7 million, and this I'm sorry, 283.7, that's correct, on page 39. In addition of
283.7?
Yeah, I got it now. I was listening and looking, but go ahead.
Got it.
Okay, that's good. Stop us anytime you can't find it, because we need to all be on the same page, on the same line.
Okay. $7.7 million, and these funds are to increase and support, the increase is to support medical education. So this represents year 2 of a 3-year plan to increase the funding formula, the component of the funding formula that supports the medical program. We note we did some research and provided some information to the General Assembly and OPB about 3 years ago, where our medical funding was lagging. We were 18% behind in what we were able to provide for our faculty, both clinical and teaching faculty. And so we agreed to adjust the factor that produces the revenue to support the medical education program by 10% over a 3-year period. So in fiscal year 19 was the first year we received, I'm sorry, fiscal year 20, we received 1/3, so it was a 33% increase, and it generated about $7 million. We made the ask in fiscal year 21, but due to the economic downturn, that amount was not funded. And so we're going back to the plan, and we're seeking funding for year 2, again, of a 3-year plan to adjust that factor in support of medical education by 10%. So when you do that, when we add that 33% increase to that factor, it generates $7.7 million. That will support medical education.
How many employees are represented in the calculation of this?
That I would have to get back. So it really supports the whole program, but we can definitely figure out, we can definitely
Well,
determine.
this is a specific funding increase for a specific group of people, is it not?
No, so this is all of the funding. The factors in the formula are kind of by category, and so we support, medical education is one of those factors. So it supports all of the instructional components. So it's the faculty, it's the staff, it's everything, and then the institution determines how those funds are allocated. So there are people absolutely that are supported through these funding, but I would have to get you the number.
So this would be everybody in Group 5, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, go ahead. Oh, excuse me, Senator Sims.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm still confused when you say medical education funding. Maybe I'm just.
Okay, so
What are we talking about? It's so broad.
the way our formula works is it makes an attempt to, because if you think about it, all credit hours taken by our students are not the same. So we have students that are taking English, liberal arts type courses, but we also have students who are in our medical college who are taking courses in the medical program. So those are weighted and valued differently in the formula. And what we recognize is that that value was lagging behind what it was really costing to provide that education. So we're
Gotcha.
proposing to adjust that factor.
Now, that's clear. Thank you so much.
The part that I don't understand, to be honest with you, at the end of line 2, says this would change the Group 5 instructor salary rate from $157,520 to $162,602, which is a $5,082 increase. This instructor group consists of medical college, dental college, veterinary college courses. That looks to me like that is a specific allocation to a specific class of employees. I don't understand the explanation with what the verbiage in here says, because it says it would change Group 5 instruction salary rate, which gives you I don't know whether this is a fixed rate or whether this changes the range.
So the amount that you just called out is actually the factor. It is a fixed number in our funding formula, and it never changes. And so what we're proposing, because the factor is used, so when the factor is used is when it looks at the number of credit hours taken by our students. So by changing the factor, right? So every clinical teaching faculty member doesn't make the 159,000 because the formula is really, it's a proxy for what these things might cost, and so it generates dollars that are provided to the institutions to pay the faculty, et cetera. So it's not a one-to-one relationship, but it's the component in the funding formula that's designed to pay it out. And so what we're proposing is to take that factor, and I'm sorry, I'm not on that page, but from, I think you said 155,000 to 100, it's like a 33% increase. And so it is, while there's a correlation, it is not the actual amount that any faculty member is paid per se. It's the factor in the formula to support medical education.
To be honest with you, that's a little bit cloudy.
So
If you increase the specific number of people, you'd have 1,503 people that this affects that get basically a $5,000 increase. I'd like to follow up back with you.
okay, and that is not the intent, but absolutely we can provide you more information on how the funds will be used.
Okay, carry on.
And I think that's it. The last component is for the Georgia Military College, and I believe Lieutenant Caldwell is going to speak to that item.
Pardon? They're not on my list, but no. Oh, I'm sorry.
And they're a pass-through organization, so.
Okay. All right, well, I had a back page I did not realize, and I'm sorry. I guess, any other questions of university system? Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
I'll take these in the order in which they're on the back page, and I apologize to those of you who've been waiting. We would have probably gotten these out of the way first because they're the quicker issues. Georgia Research Alliance, President Susan Shows. Are they present?
Susan's here, yes, sir.
All right, if you would come to the microphone, please.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Shoes?
Thank you.
Shows, go ahead.
So we have an ad on page 30 that Tracy mentioned. The number is
If you would reference the line item, please.
174.100. Is that correct, Mark? It's on page 30. 274.100 for $500,000. 274.2. Thank you. To increase funds for an eminent scholar for sickle cell research. This is the first time we have asked the state for any funding for a new eminent scholar since fiscal year 2013. And this would be our very first eminent scholar that would be a joint appointment at Morehouse School of Medicine and Emory University. Georgia has the largest caseload of sickle cell patients in the nation, and CHOA is our partner on this. We're hoping to really expand Georgia's leadership in this area, working with both Emory and Morehouse School of Medicine, and eventually we'll be bringing in the experts over at the Medical College of Georgia as well. So it's $500,000, and as Tracy mentioned, we will raise the other $1.5 million from private sources for the endowment. And then we would also be very appreciative of some bond funding. You know, these eminent scholars bring in very significant federal funding to the state. Last year, they accounted for about $600 million of federal funding. The federal agencies and industry and foundations, they love to pay for people and lab supplies. They don't pay for equipment. So that's where our taxable bonds pay off at our universities, is if we can provide nice lab outfitting for these new scholars.
So you say the federal, these programs, eminent scholar programs, bring in $600 million a year in federal funding?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. We have about 75 eminent scholars now, and they lead cutting-edge research programs across the universities. And last year, they accounted for $600 million in federal.
Are those federal funds used in the program itself, or do they come after the completion of the program, or how does that work?
They come after we recruit the eminent scholars, and GRA and the university pay for the scholar's salary, and our endowment provides some spend for them in their labs. But these grants that they are competing for, it's very competitive. They compete against other states, other universities. Those funds come to the universities to pay for research, to pay for the people in those labs. For example, the University of Georgia, you may have read, where one of our eminent scholars competed for and won the largest grant in UGA's history, up to $130 million over a 5-year period, to develop a new flu vaccine. It's cutting edge. A lot of it is life science. Some of it is cybersecurity. Some of it is energy related. Whatever the federal agency issues a call for proposals.
Okay. The personnel involved in these programs, are they on the state payroll?
They are on the state payroll. Very good point. However, their salaries are provided by what we call soft funding. For example, if they're not able to bring in these large federal grants, then they're at risk for losing their jobs. They actually, our 75 scholars, their grants cover about 1,500 salaries in the university system for the people that work in their labs.
So how does that money transition into the general budget, or the general fund to pay for the salaries that are funded?
Well,
or are those salaries paid through a separate organization?
It's paid through the university, often there's within the Office of Research, there's a separate account where the federal funds come. And much like you would have a timesheet for an employee, different account numbers are entered on those timesheets, and the federal funds pay for their salaries as opposed to state funding.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any
Thank
questions?
you.
Senator Sims, you have a question? Okay. Georgia Military College.
We'll be calling them.
Pardon?
We're going to call them.
Okay.
Number 10.
I'll tell you what we'll do. While you're getting them online, we're going to call Georgia Student Finance. Just get ready to call them. We'll call them next. President Lynn Riley. Good morning. How you doing this morning? Okay, let's see. Make sure, 5. Okay.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for having us this morning.
And I apologize to all of y'all. I did not realize there was a back sheet. I thought the front sheet I had, I was trying to get the short agencies out of the way so everybody wouldn't be waiting, and I apologize. That was an oversight on my part.
Pleasure to be here with you today. We only have a few items in the Student Finance Commission budget to go over, and I'll be as expeditious as possible. In Section 308.1, this is an enterprise.
Okay, go ahead.
Sir? An enterprise-wide adjustment to increase funds for the TRS employer share, and we have a very few number of employees that had participated in TRS, so we have a small appropriation for additional funding for that purpose.
What is that line item?
308.1, and on your tracking sheet, it's page 43.
Okay.
The next adjustment is in dual enrollment, 309.1. The reduction of $7 million is consistent with the amended fiscal year 21 budget, was also reduced by that amount to reflect more accurately a reduction in dual enrollment participation in past and projected years for FY22.
Okay. Do you expect that to go back up as we have a return to face-to-face instruction?
Well, I was fortunate enough to just have a conversation with Commissioner Dozier out in the hallway, and we anticipate eventually there will be an elevation again with on-site learning. I think Commissioner Dozier could speak to the timing because enrollment is occurring right now for fall semester. It eventually will increase, and we may be having this conversation next January on an adjustment if we see a tick back up in the desire.
Okay.
The next adjustment is section 310.1, the engineering scholarship. This is an add by the House of $192,500 for the projected need by Mercer University for enrollment in that program.
Okay. Do y'all have funds to cover this without negatively affecting Georgia Student Finance?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Consistent with the discussion we had on the amended budget, yes, the Student Finance Commission could fund these positions if need be.
Okay. Would it put you in jeopardy financially at all?
I would be honest with you, Mr. Chairman. We'd always prefer not to have to dip into reserve, but we would be able to do so.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next adjustment is section 314.1 in the HOPE grant program. The governor's recommendation was to increase funds to meet the need for HOPE grants of $7.259 million. The House reduced that to $5.429 million based on projections of actual utilization that they saw for the upcoming fiscal year.
Okay, but again, you know, when we start into 2022, if they're falling, are the projections for the fall enrollments over what they were in the fall of 2021.
Mr. Chairman, there is a bit of an increase, which is why the governor's budget considered the 7.2. The House's projections were not as high as the governor's budget. I think they were considering that there may be some drop-off consistent with what we saw with dual enrollment.
Okay. All right.
The next section is section 315.1 and 315.2. This is adjustments and increases to the Hope Scholarship programs and the Zell Miller Scholarship Program at our private institutions. The amounts are not significant. The governor's budget increased the needs for private schools of Hope scholarships of $444,000 and $166,000 for the Zell enrollments at the private institutions. And the House agreed. No changes were made there.
Okay.
Consistently, lines 316.1 and 316.2 are additions to the public schools Hope Scholarship and Zell Miller Scholarship programs, again, based on projections of increased utilization in FY 2022. For the Hope Public Schools, a $2.3 million addition of lottery proceeds, and the House agreed. And in the Zell Miller Scholarship needs for FY 2022, an increase of $5.5 million for those students, and the House agreed with that as well.
Okay. Senator Sims, I think you have a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not necessarily a question, but just a statement of interest that my colleagues and I in Southwest Georgia, the delegation, we've looked at the number of Zell Hope scholarships from our area, and it's almost non-existent. So going forward, Mr. Chairman, I want to have some conversation about that. The majority of the Zell Miller scholarships are around the metro areas of Atlanta, but we have very, very few, if we have a dozen a year.
I think we're going to have a study committee that's going to look at
Good,
that.
good,
I'm
good.
sure that'll be part of that topic.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam.
Zach.
Mr. Chairman, that is all of the adjustments to our agency's budget.
Okay. Any questions? All right. Thank you so much. And again, I apologize. I would have gotten you on sooner. It was oversight on my part.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Next, we're going to call on Georgia Military College. Have you got them online? Okay.
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Try it on the microphone.
Okay, we're ready.
There's a lot of background noise.
There's a lot of background noise. Are you on the speakerphone?
Yes, we're on your phone now. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you. You can go ahead and testify.
Mr. Chairman, this is General Caldwell. I'm the president of Georgia Military College, and I'll be going off of page 40, line 287.1. Can you hear okay? Mr. Chairman, this is General Caldwell. I'm the president of Georgia Military College.
Yes, sir. We can hear you fine. Go ahead.
Okay, and I'm going to be going off on line 287.1. And again, these are payments to Georgia Military College. And again, I'm first going to talk about the junior college. And then I'm going to talk about, secondly, about the K through 12 preparatory school, day students only. As you know, we came back into session last August, and we've been teaching in-seat since August of last year, both in the college
and in the K through 12. The funding you see there at 287.1 is for the junior college. The overall budget we get from the state pays about 4% of our operating costs. All the funding we do receive, we go to pay for a portion of our TRS cost share, and that will be used obviously for that purpose.
Okay.
And that's the only change for the junior college, sir.
Okay. Let's go. Move ahead.
And then on page 41, sir, at 288.1 through 288.3, there's 3 items there. The first one reflects the TRS increase for our K through 12 preparatory school. As you know, that's a day student only school, 100% JROTC when you get into high school. But that's the TRS funding there. The second line is addressed our enrollment decline that we experienced was about 10% because we went back 100% online. 100% in seat, and some parents wanted to remain online. We only offered in-seat education, have done it very safely since last August, and but almost every one of those families came back in January, and they're back in the school now. So they did resume the second semester. We're just very apprehensive last August when we made the decision to go back 100% in seat. And then the third one there is the offset for the austerity reduction. Obviously this is about a 60% offset coming back to help offset some of what was taken away last year. And those are the 3 items we have for the preparatory school, our K through 12 program.
Okay, on line 288.2, there's a discrepancy between the governor's recommendation and the House recommendation. Do you concur with the House?
Sir, we're aware the House made further reduction on that, but we were unable to determine why they did.
I would suggest you might follow up with them today. We're going to do that and try to find out. I need to know the reason for the discrepancy in the 2 numbers, and from your standpoint and the data that you have, I need some clarification on that. If you would follow up with the House Budget Office and find out what.
Yes, sir. We'll follow up again with the House Budget Office, but we do not know why the cut was made. In fact, the enrollment decline cut we took, all those students almost to the person are already back in school in January. They were just apprehensive because we did 100% in-seat education.
Well, we certainly want to be fair in the funding formula, but we want to make sure that we're all working off the same numbers. So if you would get with them and then touch base with me, I would very much appreciate it. Thank you, General Caldwell. If you would, I do need that information probably mid-afternoon. If you can reach out to them and touch base back with me.
Sir, we'll do that this morning.
Thank you so much, General. Appreciate you participating with us today.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Next on our agenda, non-public post-secondary education commission, Kirk Shook, Executive Director. Okay.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you for allowing us to present this morning. I am Kirk Shook, Executive Director of the Non-Public Post-Secondary Education Commission. We regulate all the private colleges in the state. I'm on page 52, tracking number 324.1. $324.1 reflects, as many other budgets here today, the adjustment in the TRS share that the state pays. That's for one employee in the amount $684. Line item 324.2, reduction in funds for that we are moving to a permanent telework model for most employees, and so we're reducing our square footage size of our rental in the amount of almost $16,000. And then 324.3 is just something to reflect that we have another fund source that funds one employee that is the Georgia SARA coordinator. They oversee the implementation of the online programs in all of the private and public colleges, including the university system and the technical college system. They have to go through our office. They get approval at the state level. Then they go to NC SARA and get approval there. So we have that one employee that's reflected here.
Okay.
So that's it for our budget. Any questions?
Any questions? Hearing none, thank you so much. I apologize for the wait. If we do this again next year and it's combined, we will probably hold the hearings on at two different times if we have an hour allotment, or we'll have a 2-hour allotment next time, and we'll have a better schedule when we find out how it's going to run. I think last on our schedule today is Technical College System of Georgia. We have Commissioner Dozier with us. Commissioner, I'm sorry to have to make you wait this long.
That is no apology needed, and thank you for the opportunity. We are, the Technical College System of Georgia is in section 46 of your document. You'll see two major changes in here, and the first one obviously is, like many of the agencies, spread through each program. So I'll mention it in the first program. That's adult education. It is 327.1, and that is the statewide adjustment related to the employer share of TRS, moving from 19.06 to 19.81. As you'll see on that item 327.1, it's in the amount of $31,712. When you look across all of the programs, that amount adds up to a total of $764,027. The next item
If you would, I'll just say this. On all of those that are general statewide percentage increases, you don't have to address them because it's in almost every agency we have.
Thank you.
In the interest of time. On everything that the House and the government the governor are in agreement on, you can skip that unless we raise an issue.
Absolutely. We will be very quick then. We have one item that is different from the governor's recommendation and the House's recommendation, and that is toward the very end. It is item 332.4. And it is an item that is to eliminate funds for the Rural Technical Worker Pilot Program of $150,000. That item was designated as pass-through money to the Technology Association of Georgia. The House reduced that $150,000 because that contract and MOA has not been signed at this point. We are very close to signing it in the current year, and it was taken out for the following year. But that is simply pass-through monies that goes simply through our budget to that association. The goal there is to obviously help map pathways at TCSG to that association's goal in technology, primarily in cyber and other areas. The fruits of that obviously have not been seen yet. Therefore, the impact, if this money is left out of the budget next year, I cannot testify today, only to testify that the goal is to actually help map those pathways closer where the association needs. That is the only item that's of change, Mr. Chairman.
The money being eliminated, is it because the agreement has not been signed, or is it because of the perceived inefficiencies in the program? If you don't want to answer that, you don't have to, because it's an opinion, I guess. But I mean, bottom line, that there's a lot of difference whether it's an administrative issue of having a signed MOU, or is it an actual evaluation program?
Yeah. The reason used by the House was that we had not moved forward with an MOU at this point. I'm not sure of any inefficiencies there, so I can't answer that.
Okay. All right, any questions for TCSG? Thank you so much, Commissioner.
Thank
I
you, sir.
appreciate your help on many, many fronts this
Absolutely.
legislative year, and look forward to continuing that relationship.
I appreciate you and the committee and your focus on workforce across the state. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. We have three individuals that are signed up. I didn't want to take public comment during the session when we had the people in here because there were so many people tied up. I wanted them to be able to get back to their jobs, but I do want to take comment on any particular line items in the budget that you may have thoughts on if you would come forward. We have three. Ms. Gwen Skinner from Devereaux and Together, Georgia. If y'all would come forward. I think Helen Sloat is visiting with us this morning. Pardon?
I'm the wing woman this morning. I brought you the maps.
Okay.
That you asked about.
Okay. If you would, just hand these out as you go down. Right there.
Good morning.
Okay, Ms. Skinner, thank you. If you would keep your comments brief, but
Certainly
cover
will.
your topic, but if you would, we're on a short schedule. We're supposed to be in session in 10 minutes.
Me too. Chairman Tippins and committee members, I'm just asking for your support on behalf of the residential treatment centers in Georgia. You have a map that shows you where they're located for items 145.3 and 145.6. Just as a little bit of background, we do have 20 schools that operate inside of residential treatment centers for children in Georgia. These are children that cannot be served by the public school system, nor would you expect the public school system to serve them because they are children who have significant emotional disturbance. You often see this demonstrated with aggression, sexual acting out,
If you would give me
behaviors.
that line item again.
145.3 and 145.6.
Okay.
They cannot attend public school. We do not draw down county funds, so we are totally dependent upon QBE, our non-QBE funds. We do fundraising and what we get paid for the children who were placed in our programs. We're requesting that you hold funding at the level our facilities were funded in FY21. That included CARES Act funding. While we appreciate CARES Act funding and we understand the reasoning behind that, it comes with strings or limitations on how we can spend it. And it has to be related to the pandemic and certain precautions that we have to take in the school. We're depending on the funds, the non-QBE funds pay our teachers. The only thing I think, as I looked over my notes and I knew we were going to be on a short time frame, I would ask you to think about our schools this way because we are small schools. We don't represent a large number of students, but a significant number of children with emotional disturbance, is that in the public school system, if you take a science teacher, if you lose a science teacher, you can find another one at another school and draw them in. For us, we have one science teacher. So we can't, if you decrease our funds and we lose a teacher, then we're unable to teach to that particular discipline. That's important for us. The funding formula that's in place now, I worked on the original one and it was better than what we had at the time. Our commitment is to work with the Department of Education to come up with a better formula that more accurately tracks the number of students. I know Chairman Tippins, that's been a question that you've had over and over about what is the accuracy of the numbers. So to come up with a formula over the summer that more accurately tracks the students that are there, ensures that they are Georgia students and that Georgia funds are being spent on Georgia students. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Do you have any questions? Senator Sams?
No questions. Here again, statement. I noticed that we do not have any of these residential facilities in Southwest Georgia, very few in South Georgia. Is there an explanation?
I would tell you, having worked for the Department of Juvenile Justice and the Department of Behavioral Health, I think these historically, a lot of these programs began as orphanages years ago, and there's some historical reasons why they are where they are. I think it was population density. Did you have enough demand in the more rural areas to have a cost-efficient residential program there? However, every one of these programs accepts children from all over the state. And we make sure that, I am particularly sensitive, having worked in state government, that our children from rural areas of the state are served.
We don't, well, my district is, the majority of it is rural, but there is a heavily populated Albany, Georgia. We're looking at Valdosta, which is heavily populated. So Bainbridge. So it's not necessarily rural. Maybe that's the way you all are defining where the facilities need to be located. But when you say you accept children from all over the state, okay, these are residential areas. These are residential centers, I'm sorry.
Right.
Okay.
They are residential centers where we provide treatment and education. And let me add what further complicates that, because I'm serving on the Governor's Commission on Innovation in Behavioral Health, is the fact that we've got 77 counties in Georgia that don't even have a full-time psychiatrist. We've got 76 counties in Georgia that don't have a psychologist. Part of the reasons, too, when you see treatment programs gravitate towards more metropolitan areas is there's a workforce there. I chair the workforce committee on the commission, and it's one of the things we're looking at is access to services in all areas of the state. I think your concern is absolutely on target, and I think it's something that Georgia is going to have to address. But that's where the schools historically have just, in the residential treatment programs have gone, because that's where you've got the professionals, and that's where sometimes.
We have Valdosta State, we have Georgia Southwestern, we have Albany State, and they train professionals to work in those areas. So that's not quite what I'm buying. Maybe you guys are selling that, but that's not what I'm buying. I'm asking that in the future, we think about the placement of facilities, especially when we have to come and ask for state and federal dollars, because they're taxpayers there too.
I absolutely appreciate your concern. And working for DEVRA, we have the ability to grow programs in other areas of the state and would love to do that. I would love to come and meet with you and talk to you about the issues of where programs go and why. And I agree with you. That's an area of the state, it always has been for years, where it's not had the services.
It would be difficult for me to explain this to my Southwest Georgia constituents.
Yes.
I will mention this, that all these facilities are private organizations, correct? I mean,
Yes.
these are not governmentally established.
No, these
Do
are
they
not
get
governmental.
state funding?
Pardon? They get state
With the
funding,
exception.
but you have to have, I mean, it's a private initiative that started the program.
Right.
We, and Senator, I'm going to just study law together, Georgia, and I actually taught in Camilla, Georgia for 3 years, way back when, so I am very familiar with.
If you would speak to the, stand to the mic, Judge Stedman.
I'm very familiar, but we
If you would go to the mic, please, ma'am.
I'm sorry. Who license these and puts these centers out when they come to them, and I do, through Together Georgia, we do a new provider training really as a gift to the state, to DFACS and to DJJ, 3 times a year, and we have new providers who come and talk about setting up different things. That's not a decision any of us makes. You know, the decision is made by the Department of Family and Children's Services. The decision is made by DJJ. We know they need to be there, and I have always, having worked in Camilla way back when, I have always been a real advocate for rural Georgia. I think Gwen and I both have, but that's a decision that's made by the state. We just have those. So
We-
But hopefully you guys can influence it, and we'll talk about it later.
We will, and we
Okay.
will certainly fight for it,
Thank
so
you.
thank you.
And I do want you to know, working for Devereaux, that I have a Devereaux employee in Albany who makes sure that children come from that area of the state to us to make sure that we have them. So,
Thank you.
Let's follow
Thank
up on that later. We're short on time, past time. Next speaker, Ms. Gail Smith from Georgia School Counselors Association.
It's 3 minutes still.
Good morning, Chairman Tippins. How are you?
Fine, Ms. Smith. How you doing?
And thank you to the Appropriations Committee for this time this morning, and I promise I'll be brief. My name is Gail Smith, and I'm a past president and a retired educator, and presently I'm advocacy chair for Georgia School Counselor Association. And before I start, I want to say on behalf of GSCA, we want to thank you for adding the $1,000 educator supplement to the amended FY21 budget. Our educators really appreciate that after the challenging year we've all had, so thank you very much for that. GSCA is requesting that this subcommittee consider including funding the school counselor to student ratios of 1 to 450 that were signed into law in 2013. And it was in the Title 20 Cleanup Act in 2013 that we had a 3-year phase-in plan. The first year we lowered the ratios to 1 to 450. The middle school ratio at that time was much higher. It was 1 to 624. It was too high. So that 3-year plan, the second year, we were going to phase in funding for special ed, gifted ed, over the next 2 years, remedial ed, and ESOL students. The funding in 2018 for for remedial ed and ESOL students was added in. It was about $4 million, but the special ed and gifted ed segments are still unfunded. The funding we've calculated it at $24.3 million would add approximately 450 additional school counselors across the state. And Senator Sims, that would really impact your district, because the additional funding and those counselor positions would go more toward the rural areas than they would toward the metro areas. So the school districts in your area specifically would be impacted in a very positive way.
Ms. Smith, if you could get me some information, county by county, on what the ratios are on school counselors, and if y'all have it broken down by, not by grade level, but by elementary, middle, and high school.
We can do that. The latest data I have is 18-19, but we could get that from the DOE as soon as possible for you. Just a real quick, last year the FY21 budget included the funding for the 1 to 450 ratios, but because of all the budget adjustments that had to be made due to the pandemic, it was taken out. And now we're requesting that it be added back in, and the amount, like I said, is $24.3 million. These additional school counselors are going to be needed in our schools as our students transition back to in-person learning. And we know they're coming back in having experienced anxiety and depression and all kinds of other mental health issues from teaching and learning in isolation. Every child in this state has a school counselor. We want to have an adequate number of school counselors to be able to provide wraparound services to these students as they're returning to school. So the timing for this year is really critical for this. That's all I have to say. If you have questions, I would love to answer those.
Thank you very much. Our last speaker of the day is Mike Dunham from the Associated General Contractors. He will be brief.
I will be very brief. The construction industry has a great workforce need. We are asking that you take a look and support the House $500,000 to the Connect Act. We ask that the Senate join with them. That $1 million mark will fund 31 new certified programs and help us recertify 6. This will bring our total to 50% of all the programs, 92 certified, which has been a milestone and a goal that we've been pursuing.
Is this certification or credentialing programs?
It's certification
Certification.
with a very rigorous credentialing process for the student.
And this is capital asset funding through the bond program,
Yes,
right?
it is, through the
Okay.
Connect Act. Any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Any questions? Thank y'all so much for it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your consideration.
All right, thank y'all so much. Having no further business, we stand adjourned.